What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to a brand new video, and today we're going to be talking about the drama that's been going on in the NBA, all these fights, everything that's going on. We're going to be focusing on one specific fight because I feel like there's a huge story behind the whole thing, and I feel like it's been built up over time. The Chris Paul and Blake Griffin fight, you guys all saw it the other night. The Clippers were beating the Rockets, and then a huge fight broke out. There were stories that they were going to the locker room. They were going to meet up in the locker room and fight, and all this was going to go on. I'm going to focus more on Chris Paul and Blake Griffin in specific. I'm not going to be talking about the locker room fight, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into this and why I literally think that this fight broke out and how I feel like it's been built up over time. In the offseason, Chris Paul decided to sign with the Houston Rockets, and he made his decision. He decided to leave the Los Angeles Clippers. Wanted to move on from the Clippers. Nobody really knows the exact reason why. Most of it's speculation. Most of it has been made up or just talked about. And we've heard rumors about Chris Paul was unhappy with Doc Rivers. We've always heard the rumors that Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan never got along. And it's just the Clippers back then, they were always a good team. Always a good team. Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, always a good big three that they had there. But it never equaled playoff success. They never got past the second round together. That could be a possibility why Chris Paul decided to leave. But I think most of it is on the inside of the locker room that none of us see, that none of us really know the real reason about. We just hear the reports, we hear the rumors, we hear everybody talking, but we don't know. We don't see it with our own eyes. We have no idea what really happened in the Clippers locker room. Can't speak. Back then when Chris Paul was on the Los Angeles Clippers. Now he's decided to move on, of course, and now he seems really happy with the Houston Rockets. He seems like he's been doing good without James Harden since James Harden is hurt right now, and I just think that Chris Paul, it was better for him to move on. As far as the relationship goes for Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, we never know if those two really never got along. It seems like they did, but I guess Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan didn't get along very well either. And it always seemed like those two did. And that's why there was speculation that DeAndre Jordan almost took that offer from the Mavericks, verbally agreed, that just because him and Chris Paul did not get along. Well, my opinion on the whole fight is Austin Rivers came out and said at the beginning of the season, said that when you were asked who the number one option is in LA, either Chris Paul or Blake Griffin, no one really knew the answer. And it always most of the time turned into an argument. That is not good for an NBA locker room. No one really needs to know the number one option. You don't really need to talk about that. But most of the time it is talked about because it's just how the NBA is. It's the guy you're going to go to when you need a bucket, or when you need some success and you're down by 5 or whatever you're down by. And I feel like most of it, I feel like that could be a real reason why Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, just low-key didn't like each other in a way. Like, they were teammates that got along. They seemed like they got along fine. But, of course, if you're going to be arguing about who the number one option is or who it should be, and no one can take the back seat to it, then that's a problem. That's a real problem in the locker room. It's like a big elephant in the room. It's like a big, huge elephant in the room. You just have no idea what's going to happen and when fights can break out. And I think an interesting fact is that I think back then in the day, it was near the trade deadline. Chris Paul, it seemed like Chris Paul was upset with Doc Rivers. Didn't trust Doc Rivers after Doc Rivers decided not to trade Austin Rivers just because he didn't want to trade his son. I guess the Clippers could have landed Carmelo Anthony back in the day at the trade deadline, I think it was. And if that is true, Doc Rivers made a huge mistake. I'm not saying Carmelo Anthony would have lifted them over their second round woes or whatever you want to say. Of course, the Clippers never could stay healthy either. That's always been a problem. Chris Paul and Blake Griffin always went down towards the end of the playoffs. They had some good success. They just never really they never even made it to the Western Conference Finals. That's just how unlucky this team was. But if Doc Rivers really seriously was not going to trade his son Austin Rivers just because of his son for the better of the organization, that's really terrible management, and I don't blame Chris Paul for wanting to leave after that. If you hear that you can get a star player that's going to help your team in the playoffs and it's going to help your future success or whatever you want to say, maybe Carmelo Anthony would have stayed and maybe Chris Paul is still on the Clippers to this day. That is terrible, terrible management, and I do not blame Chris Paul for being unhappy whatsoever. That is terrible management. Doc Rivers made a huge mistake. If that is true, definitely should have traded his son for Carmelo Anthony. That would have been immediate success. Although Austin Rivers is really young, so I could kind of get it, but I could also see I'm trying to find the word, the favoritism there, because that's his son. Of course, he's not going to want to trade his own son. But I think this has been built up for a long time. That's what I see this. I think this has been built over time. Words were said the other night, and then things were escalated, and things almost went to the locker room, I guess. I didn't watch the game, didn't see the whole fight. I just heard about it. It was very unfortunate. The NBA has had a lot of fights lately, but I think this has been built over time. Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, I think, have always argued about who the number one option was, and when these two got to face each other, I think it was icing on the cake for these two, because they just never really got along. I don't think the Clippers organization was run well, and I think that's the big reason why this has been built up over time. And I think everyone's downplaying it, Chris Paul and Blake Griffin especially, but it's been awesome, man. New rivalry in the NBA, it seems like. Hopefully maybe these two match up in the playoffs. Who knows? That would be awesome. Chris Paul versus Blake Griffin in the first round of the playoffs. That would be something fun to watch. But other than that, guys, that's all I have to say about the fight anyway. Thank you all so much for watching, and let me know how I did. Let me know how I've been doing on these NBA talks. I'm still very new to this, so leave me your feedback. Let me know how I'm doing. Go ahead and follow me on my Instagram. Follow me on my Twitter. Leave a like. Subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. This is Crushables, and I'm saying peace.